Shalom. Is it possible for humans to change? Is it possible to overcome the inclination, the temptation to do bad things? Today, here on Talmidei Yehoah, we're going to look at how Yaacov, yes, one of the three primary ancestors of the children of Yisrael, you have Abraham, then Yitzchak, Yaakov. We're going to look at how Yaakov's name was changed to Yisrael. The name Yisrael not only teaches us that change is possible, the teaching from the Torah on how to change is literally embedded in the name Yisrael. Yes, the very name Yisrael teaches us how to change. I'm Moriah ben Avraham. Please join us here on this channel. Hit the like and subscribe button. Also remember, turn on your notifications so you'll be notified every time we upload a new video very similar to this one, where you will learn on important topics that we need to learn about from the Torah that are helping us in our return. So let's get into it. Let's face it, it's not easy to change. There are things that we can see in our own lives that we need to change. But I have good news. The Torah tells us, yes, humans can change. We can change, and the name Yisrael literally gives us instruction on how to change. To understand this, we're going to have to look at this account in the Torah in depth. The Hebrew is very revealing in how it instructs us on how we can change. To get into this, let's start off, first of all, with a little backstory. Let's understand what led up to this moment of transition in Yaakov's life where his name was changed. To really get the sense of it, we have to start off actually with his birth, with the name Yaakov. What does the name Yaakov actually mean? Afterwards, his brother came out. That's after Esau was born. So then now we're talking about Yaakov being born. It says, afterward his brother came out with his hand holding on Esau's heel. So he named him Yaakov, not Jacob, by the way, and Yitzchak was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. Now, we can't fully appreciate what we're learning here today if we just read the English. So from the Hebrew it says, Ve'acharei chen yatsa achiu ve'yado ochezef ba'akev Esau vayikra shmo Yaakov ve'yitzchak ben shishim shana beledet otham. I want you to see if you can hear this repetition of this term. His hand ochezet ba'akev. Vayikra shmo, therefore they called his name Yaakov. So the name Yaakov literally means one who takes by the heel, one who grabs his brother's heel, one who supplants somebody else. See, if you snatch somebody's heel, you're tripping them up. You're making them fall down. Besides the fact that you may be also taking what belongs to them, taking their reward. So the name Yaakov reveals something about the characteristic of this person. This person has a tendency to trip others up. And we see that he lived up to his Shem, right? He lived up to that name. See, not every chosen person in the Torah is righteous. We don't start off the way we need to end up. Change is something that we need to go through. We need to become holy. Be you holy, Yehoah says, as I am holy. Kodesh is the Hebrew word for holy. We have to become that way. Yehoah made us in his likeness and image, but we're not a finished product from birth. We have to choose to be like him, and that's why change is so important. We can make choices that can help us be like Elohim. We have to choose to live that way. And that's what we're going to be learning about here, how to go from being Yaakov to Yisrael. Now, Yaakov had some serious flaws. From his birth, grabbing his brother's heel. We see it played out as they grew up. And without taking a lot of time to go into the manifestation of how this name played out in Yaakov's life, just recounting it very quickly, you remember how Yaakov, first of all, took advantage of his brother. His brother coming back from hunting, was feeling weak, was feeling very hungry, and he did a stupid thing, his brother. He sold his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. That was stupid. He despised his birthright. But that doesn't justify Yaakov taking advantage of his brother's weakness. And so that was one incident where he took advantage of his brother. A second incident, he literally deceived his father, dressed up like his brother, knowing his father's eyesight wasn't good, deceived his father and stole the birthright. And when that happened, we read this. And he said, this is Yitzchak speaking, your brother came deceitfully and has taken away your blessing. Then Esau said, is he not rightly named Yaakov, meaning heel catcher, supplanter? For he has betrayed me these 2 times. And again, the Hebrew word translated betrayed here is literally a variation of the same consonants, ayin, kof, and beit. It's literally wa Yaakoveni. Let me read it in Hebrew. Wa yomer haki kara shmo Yaakov. Wa Yaakoveni ze pa'amayim. Is he not rightly named Yaakov? For he has betrayed me, supplanted me, tripped me up these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. And he said, have you not reserved a blessing for me? So we can see how Yaakov was living up to his name, supplanting his brother, and probably this was a characteristic of his nature, so you can expect that he didn't do it only in these 2 occasions, but this was a part of the nature that Yaakov was going to have to, let us say, wrestle with, let us say, fight against. He would have to overcome. And like I said, Yaakov is one of our ancestors. So just as he had to wrestle against things in his life, he had to become a better person. You can count on the fact that there are things in each one of us that we have to struggle against. We have to wrestle against. And so what we're going to do now is dive into how that transformation in Yaakov's life took place so that we can follow that example and change also. And the key to change is embedded in the very new name that Yaakov was given. So let's read that account now. After Yaakov had deceived his brother, he fled and lived with his uncle for 20 years. 20 years had passed. He's now got children. He's got 4 wives. And he's returning back to the land of Yisrael. And he sends messengers to find out, is his brother going to still be angry with him? He goes and he sends these messengers to check. And the messengers come back and they tell him, oh, your brother Esau, he's coming. And he's coming with 400 men. And that really scared Yaakov. He was trembling. He didn't know what to do. He prays very genuinely, very sincerely, asks Yehovah to help him, to save him and his family. And then in this moment of extreme distress, Yaakov has a spiritual encounter that leads to his transformation. Now let's look at this in detail. Then Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Now there's a lot here. We need to unpack this verse. To understand it fully, him being left alone, we got to take a jump back a couple of verses to verse 22, where he took his family across this brook, a small ford. And it says that ford was called Yabok. Now the word Yabok means emptying. And so here we get our very first point of instruction. To make change, we need to first of all be alone. And to be alone in the right way, where change is possible, you have to start off by going into a state of mind where you're emptying yourself of all your pride. You have to go through a period of emptying. Sometimes we're too full to change. We think of ourselves too highly, too proudly. We don't even see the need to change. So step number one in change is going through an emptying, crossing over into a state where we really are ready now to examine who we really are. We're really to see ourselves in the right way. And only then can we begin to wrestle with our problems, which is exactly what we see Yaacov doing. In order to change, Yaacov had to be alone. And then it says, in that state of being empty and being alone, a man wrestled with him until daybreak. We'll find out more about who that man is that's wrestling with him as we continue reading. But I want to take a look at the Hebrew word that's translated here as daybreak. The Hebrew is very metaphoric. The Hebrew term is aloth hashachar. It says, Vaye'avek ish imo ad aloth hashachar. Now, aloth means to lift up, to make something go up. And what he says is going to go up is the darkness, hashachar. Which, of course, daybreak is a good translation, because when we have daybreak, it's like the darkness in the day is lifted. But you see, you miss the power of the metaphor when you just say daybreak. When you think of it the Hebrew way it's being said here, you can think about the lifting up of the darkness. So Yaakov wrestled with a man until the darkness in his life was lifted up. And that's the determination we need to have when we're wrestling with, struggling against something in our lives that we need to change. We have to keep that fight going until the darkness is lifted. Ad aloth hashachar. That's point number 2. Start off, empty yourself and be alone. Point number 2, be committed to wrestle with it until the lifting of the darkness. Now we continue reading. When the man saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of Yaakov's hip. And the socket of Yaakov's hip was dislocated while he wrestled with him. And that's an important point too. We'll get back to that shortly. But I want you to realize that, you see, this wasn't only an internal struggle. We can't take this account and say, oh, this was just some spiritual encounter that only took place in Yaakov's mind. It was literal. He literally wrestled, because when he left that encounter, he left limping. It changed the way he literally walked. Verse 26, then he said, let me go. Why? He says, Vayomer shalacheni ki Allah hashakar. Okay, again, the darkness is lifting. But Yaakov said, Vayomer lo ashalechaka ki im beraktani. I will not let you go unless you bless me. Oh yes, if we're going to really change, we have to hold on. We have to continue holding on until the darkness is lifted, until we're blessed. Verse 27. So he said to him, what is your name? Now again, when you read this in English, it doesn't come across with the same sense you're getting in Hebrew. Because a name is just a label, it's not characteristic. But in Hebrew, he's literally asking, what's your characteristic? Who are you really? He said to him, Ma shemeka, what is your characteristic? And Yaakov confesses now and says, Vayomer Yaakov, I am a heel catcher. I'm a supplanter. I trip people up. I got this problem. And you see, in order for us to really change, there has to be deep recognition of the problem that we actually are. If we don't really want to give up who we actually are, then we cannot change. We have to come to accept that we are Yaakov if we're going to actually receive the blessing that enables us to change. Then he said, your Shem shall no longer be Yaakov. You're no longer going to be a heel catcher, but Yisrael, for you have wrestled or contended with Elohim and with men and have prevailed. Did you get that? Let me read it in Hebrew. Vayomer lo Yaakov, Ye'amer od shimcha, Ki im Yisrael, ki saritha im Elohim wa im anashim wa tukal. And he said to him, you will no longer be called Yaacov. Yaacov is no longer going to be what you're called. That's no longer going to be your characteristic. But Yisrael. Why? What does the name Yisrael mean? It says because you have saritha. Now saritha means you have wrestled and prevailed. You have wrestled like a prince. Like a sar is a prince. You wrestled like a prince. Im Elohim. With Elohim. With im anashim. And you have prevailed. The Elohim is Yehovah. In other words, he brought Elohim into the fight against, who was he fighting against? Himself. He's fighting against that nature within that is the Yaacov. He's fighting against his own human nature. But to prevail against our human nature, we need to bring Elohim into the battle. We need to ask Elohim to help us to struggle against who we are. We need to hold on to Yehovah, hold on to Elohim until the Aloth HaShakar, until he blesses us. And when he blesses us, then we're changed and our name is changed. Then we prevail. We need to be those who bring Elohim into the struggle. And that is the miraculous power that enables us to actually change. Yaakov asked him and said, please tell me your Shem. But he said, why is it that you ask my Shem? And he blessed him there. And then Yaakov named the place Peniel. For he said, I have seen Elohim face to face, yet my life has been spared. Yes, he said he was going to call this place Peniel. And Peniel literally is taking the word face, panim, and he's saying, I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life has been saved. I've been spared. I've been saved. We get saved in the struggle against ourselves when we bring Elohim into the battle. When we wrestle, when we see Elohim face to face. And that can only happen. This is not something you could do in a group. This isn't something you can do by just following someone else. You have to have that really intense personal introspection. You have to really get to that point where you're alone. Only you understand your own inward struggle. No one can tell you about it. No one can help you fight it. No one other than Elohim. Verse 31, now the sun rose up upon him just as he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his hip. Yeah, Yaakov couldn't come away from that experience walking the same way he walked before. Now, in Hebrew thought, your walk is your way of life. And so, too, if we really have the intense, personal, internal struggle, we bring Yehovah into that struggle. We confess what we're fighting against, what it is we're trying to change. And Yehovah blesses us. We hold on to the Aloth HaShakar, and Yehovah blesses us and helps us and brings about change in our life. Our walk, the way we walk in the world, will truly be different. And that's one of the main blessings of being in covenant relationship with Yehovah. One of the reasons he invites us to be in covenant relationship with him is so that we can walk with him. He can be in the struggle with us. You see, the name Yisrael is not a name that suggests that we've made it already. It's a name that suggests that we're joined in battle. We're bringing Yehovah into the daily struggle that we face. You see, that's what it means to be Ivri, Hebrew, if you will. When you're Ivri, it means you've crossed over. You've crossed over that brook. You've gone through the steps of being empty, emptying yourself of who you are, realizing what it is that needs to be changed, and entering into a committed struggle against the human nature, against what's weak in us, against what's wrong in us, so that we can be like our ancestors, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yisrael. And so, we should not continue to walk the way we have walked in the past. When we're really understanding the truth about our ancestor, Yaakov, we know that change is possible. He laid out the plan for us, the process for us. Start off by crossing over. Be Ivri for real. Cross over and empty yourself and be alone. Number one, be alone. Number two, you have to then commit to the struggle until the Aloth HaShakar, until you're blessed. And then you have to walk differently. Point number three, walk differently. Walk with Elohim. Walk according to the blessing that you have received, where your name is truly, your characteristic is truly changed. If you enjoyed this message, I invite you to remember to share this with your friends. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Also turn on your notifications. And join us again next time as we continue in our journey ad Yahweh. Shalom, shalom.